Well, first of all, I want to say I agree with you, and I think that it's not just that we have a problem with fatherism and families, but I think we've now decided to minimize them, right? And so we say, like, any talk of it, we shouldn't be talking about fathers, we should be talking about parents, and it's like, you know what? I think that's the bigger problem. It's so you have a lack of it to begin with, and now we're minimizing it. And the problem is that mothers play a huge role and fathers play a huge role, and to take one or the other and dismiss it is just stupid. It's wrong, because I wouldn't be who I am today without my mom, nor would I be who I am today without my father. And to the extent that we can encourage that apparatus, and sometimes it's not a perfect thing, and I get that. We live in a flawed society, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't look to try to encourage that and support policies that encourage it.
What's doing, everybody? I'm Alec Lace. Thank you for watching First Class Fatherhood. Today's guest on the podcast is Sean Spicer. Sean Spicer is very well known for being the first White House press secretary for the Trump administration. He's also very well known as being a contestant on Dancing with the Stars, where he made it to the quarterfinals. He's got a brand new book out right now titled Radical Nation. The link to the book is down there in today's show notes. While you're down there, smack the subscribe button, tap that like, and let's jump into it right now with Sean Spicer on First Class Fatherhood. Joining me now, First Class Father, Sean Spicer. Welcome to First Class Fatherhood.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, let's start here. How many kids do you have? How old are they?
I have two 10-year-olds, so I got my hands full.
Wow, God bless you there. If you could, Sean, just take 1 minute here to hit my listeners with a little bit about your background and what you do.
So real quick, I mean, I grew up in Rhode Island. My father was a yacht salesman, and we were not a political family. I kind of got bit by the political bug in college. And then, as I like to tell people, I felt like a minor league baseball player in the political world, where, you'd go from campaign to campaign, kind of trying to work up to the next bigger thing, if you will. And then was back and forth on Capitol Hill. I ended up getting sort of what I would say was my dream job in the majors, politically speaking, in 2011. I had just come off active duty and spent the next 6 years, 3 cycles at the RNC, and then that's where in that final cycle, the 2016 election, President Trump became the nominee of the party, and I had developed a relationship with him, and on December 22nd, 2016, he named me White House press secretary, and I think that sort of changed my life forever. So, and then, as you know, I've now published, just put out my 3rd book last week called Radical Nation, and that kind of lays out to me where I think the country is headed and some of the concerns that I have.
Yeah, Sean, and I'm going to jump into the book, Radical Nation. Link to the book is in the description of this podcast episode. So if you could take me back then, 10 years old, about how old were you then when you became a dad, and how did becoming a father kind of change your perspective on life?
Well, I mean, I was, I'm doing the math right now. I was 39 years old, obviously late to the game. I think, it's there's so many things that change, right? There's a level of responsibility that change, but more importantly, I think priorities change. When you're married, you're obviously, you suddenly go from being single to concerned about the welfare and well-being of somebody else, and you want to grow as a couple, all that. I think a child changes things tremendously, because your priority now is first and foremost their development, their well-being. They're not they're not sustainable on their own. So you need to provide for them in a way that you've never provided for anybody as an individual. You can care for, I know sometimes people care for a younger sibling or something like that, but when you have a baby, you are financially, emotionally, and every other way directly in charge of making sure that individual grows and is taken care of.
Yeah, very well said, Sean. And listen, being a parent right now in this country, there's a lot to be concerned about right now. We're seeing parents being called domestic terrorists for wanting to get involved and change some of the school curriculum that may be, with either critical race theory, or they don't want boys in their daughter's bathroom. And there's a lot of pushback on it. And there's a lot of things right now to be concerned. I think a lot of parents around the country now, we see them, they're storming into these school board meetings. They want some answers. And there's been a lot of blowback. Meanwhile, the education system is largely failing. We're We're 38th in the world in math, 24th in the world in science. Literacy rate is very far down the scale here. What's your take on all this?
Well, first and foremost, as much as I wish it was for different reasons, I'm glad it's heartwarming to see so many parents engaged in their communities, in their school boards, in politics. So it's unfortunate that it's for the reasons that it is, but I look at it like a good thing because I think that getting involved in the process. So many parents during COVID, for the first time, were looking over their kid's shoulder while they were on a Zoom saying, what are you learning? What are you reading? How are you being instructed? And how are you interacting with other people? And I think that was enlightening. So I think as a byproduct of so many of the bad things that came of the pandemic was a good thing. Parents getting much more involved in their kids' development and education. But it is concerning what is being taught, and frankly the dismissal of some of these concerns, where, to your point, like people are saying, calling them names or saying that that's not true. And then the bigger byproduct that you brought out is, we are living in a world where kids need to compete. China is, despite what the president said a year and a half ago, they are trying to eat our lunch. They are our competition, and our children need to grow up with skills and with a mentality that is going to allow them to compete and continue to make America the great country it is. And here's why that this is the most important. It's not just about competing and winning against China. It's about ensuring that there's a counterweight, that there's a reason that people want to come to America, because it is the greatest country. It is a free country. It's a place where we can do and say things to some extent still. And I think that if we don't fight for it, it will get lost. And so I am concerned about it. And I do believe that we need to make sure that kids have the tools and the mentality. And so if they're growing up believing that they're all victims and that everything's wrong in the country, that's a problem.
Yeah, a lot of problems. I'm in New Jersey here, and last year they added to the school curriculum for the sex education anal sex. They felt was important to teach to the 8th graders. I had an 8th grader last year, freshman now, but they're not teaching them how to balance a checkbook. They don't seem to think that's important. But anal sex, that makes we got to change. If you have a problem with it, you're being considered, stay out of the way. You have no right being involved. So very frightening stuff there. And then being, with your 2 10-year-olds there, what would you consider to be the top values that you hope to instill in them growing up?
I mean, I think integrity is important. My father always taught me that, your word was your bond, that you need to be there for your friends. You need to take care of people less fortunate. And so I think those are the kind of things that we want them to have, a set of core values, that to look out for people, to take care of people, that when you give them your word, that you follow through and you make a commitment, you'll follow through on it.
Yeah, and how about as far as discipline goes with the two of them? What type of disciplinarian are you as a dad, and is that different than the discipline style you grew up with?
There's a lot more spanking when I grew up. I think, and it's interesting. I every once in a while I think about it. It's in the course of one generation, I think that we've really changed how we parent discipline wise, and in some ways good, because I don't I think there was always that sort of feeling back in the day, 30 years ago, 40 years, whatever it was, 40 years ago, where there was this I'm only I'm punishing you because I love you or something. But I think we're different now. We try to course correct in a much more positive way, and so it is different.
Yeah, definitely. Discipline styles. And most of the dads that I bring on here will attest to the same thing. Yeah, it was either spank, the spoon, the switch, they don't do it, themselves now. So definitely.
And I don't even know. It was interesting because I'm sure something happened along the way between when I grew up and when I had kids, but I just don't think it's part of it's societal anymore. You know what I mean? It's not like there are some people who believe in it and some people don't. I'm not sure that I know any parent that really is disciplines like their parents did.
Yeah, well, a couple of the Navy SEALs I've had on the show here, they seem to be, they put a little corporal punishment in some of their discipline, that's for sure. But listen, before I jump into the book here, Radical Nation, I want to just get a quick hitter on Dancing with the Stars. What did your kids think? First of all, was this something you got roped into? You sought to get on? Did you lose a poker game to get on there? And what did your kids think of you getting involved in the Dancing with the Stars?
Um, I had been asked to do it for almost 3 years and had said no. And then we started to we sort of continued the conversation, if you will, with the folks. And I sort of had a quick conversation with the kids and said, what do you think? And because I felt like the third sort of iteration, if you will, or whatever it was, the second, it was going to be the last. I mean, they don't keep asking you. At some point they say, hey, all right, we get the hint. We're not going to. And, you know, if you ever watch the show, you know that I don't have any artistic or musical rhythm, talent, etc. So my daughter knows that very well. We'd gone to a father-daughter dance, and I think I pretty much embarrassed her in like 8 seconds. So she was like, I don't know that this is a good idea. My son thought it was, I don't even think he fully appreciated what it was, but he thought it was great. And so, but I also thought that it would be like a 2-week deal. I thought, okay, I'm horrible. I'll do this thing. I'll have some fun for a week and a half, and then I'll be off. And we ended up going all the way to the quarterfinals. So, I will tell you though, I look back on it. I'm literally right now talking to you from LA. I'm going to be at the show tonight. It was a great experience. I loved the people. They tell you when you join, and it sounds like a bumper sticker, but they're like, oh, it's like a family. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it's just a talking point. It really is. There's just great people that are involved in that show. It's been on 30 seasons now, and so many of the people that are part of it have been with it for years. And I'm honestly, I was I was probably more nervous doing that than I was with anything else. And I had a blast doing it.
Yeah, I've had quite a few dads that have been on the show. I just recently had Donny Osmond, who won on the show, and everybody that I've talked to has always had a great experience on it. It's fun to watch. I think it's a good show. And so let's turn it into here, Radical Nation. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, dangerous plan for America. Now, obviously, we're seeing it. The recent poll, 71% of Americans think the country is headed in the wrong direction here. Obviously, this administration's been failing right from the dribble. Listen, in my opinion, I think the fatherless crisis is one of the biggest social problems we have in this country. I think if we had more dads involved in their kids' lives, or if we could strengthen our nuclear family units, I think most of the problems we're seeing would start to go away here. Why did you decide to write Radical Nation? What's it all about?
Well, first of all, I want to say I agree with you. And I think that it's not just that we have a problem with fatherism and families, but I think we've now decided to minimize them, right? And so we say, like, any talk of it, we shouldn't be talking about fathers, we should be talking about parents. And it's like, you know what? I think that's the bigger problem. It's so you have a lack of it to begin with, and now we're minimizing it. And the problem is that mothers play a huge role and fathers play a huge role. And to take one or the other and dismiss it is just stupid. It's wrong, because I wouldn't be who I am today without my mom, nor would I be who I am today without my father. And to the extent that we can encourage that apparatus, and sometimes it's not a perfect thing, and I get that. We live in a flawed society, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't look to try to encourage that and support policies that encourage it. With respect to the book, look, the Radical Nation is the first comprehensive look at this administration, the policies and the people that make it up, and I think, frankly, the direction that we're going. What it does, and especially as you head into the holidays and you're going to have the crazy aunt or uncle that's going to argue politics with you, is that I think it gives you a roadmap as to what's beneath so many of the people and the politics. And what I mean by that is, I don't honestly believe, and through no fault of their own, because actually 2 chapters in the book are about the media and the lack of what's covered. I think because of what people don't see, I don't think that there's a full appreciation of who these people are that are running the U.S. government right now in this administration, nor do I think that people fully appreciate the policies that are being implemented and why. Like, what are they seeking to achieve? Because so much of what's happening now has a fancy bumper sticker, build back better, right? It's like, that's really cute. It sounds great. Everybody's on board. We throw around words like voting rights. that hopefully we're all on board on. Um, but when you scratch beneath the surface of so many of these things, you go, no, that's not what I thought we were buying into. So I really the whole goal of Radical Nation is to give people an understanding of where we are, and frankly, where I use the term in a serious way. Biden has told us that he wants to be the most progressive president ever. He told us the other day that he wants to transform the country and also transform the economy. Look, if you agree with that, God bless you. This is America. It's a free country. But I think that for a lot of people who voted in the last election, that's not what they bought into. And I'm talking about even Democrats. I think there's a lot of people who wanted to right the ship, who wanted a more steady direction. I don't think that they bought into to transforming the nation.
Yeah, listen, like I said, Radical Nation, a link to the book is in the description of today's podcast episode. And obviously, Sean, we see a big difference the way that the media is covering Joe Biden as opposed to how it treated. Like, you never even got a chance to really even settle into the Donald Trump presidency. It was just cannons right from the get-go. Obviously, we now a difficult job, obviously, press secretary. We're seeing Jen Psaki go through it now. They call her Little Red Lying Hood. She's up against it sometimes in her own way, but nothing compared to what I seen you. And then I was there. I was at the press conference. I was at a couple of press briefings. I took part in one, actually made some headlines myself for getting involved there. But the way that the press corps treated Trump's press secretaries is far different than the way we're seeing Jen Psaki being treated by the press corps. What was it like for you as a dad to go through that? And like, now I know your kids are young here, obviously not on social media yet, but what is it like for you? Do you keep the kids? You have any concerns about what they're going to find out about you online and that entire thing, about you being the press secretary?
Well, first of all, during the tenure, they were a little bit younger, so they were less exposed, but they did see things here and there. And so we tried to shield them from a lot of things, my wife and I, and not so much like the issues, but just from because obviously in the world that we live in today, there's some scary people out there. So we're fairly protective of our kids and their sort of online presence, if you will. It's just not which is unfortunate. It's it's at some point they can make their own decisions for themselves, but until then, I don't necessarily think that they need to be exposed to some of the vitriol that exists out there. That's obviously transformed a lot more now with the further away we've gotten from the administration, some of the other things that I've done. I mean, they've seen some things. They've, so I'm sure as they get older, they'll Google more. But it's also, between Dancing with the Stars, I've got a show now every night at 6:00 on Newsmax called Spicer and Company that they're very familiar with and they watch. I mean, we have it on, that they'll watch it while they're having dinner. So they're very conscious of what I do now and enough of the background. But it's an interesting balancing act between what we expose them to and what we don't.
Yeah, because it's such a cesspool on social media. It's amazing what people feel free to say on there about people. And it's sometimes I think they get so disconnected, they forget that these are family people, no matter what side of the aisle you are on. So people are kind of nuts with the way they are on there. So obviously, all right, you got the book out now. You do the show on Newsmax. What kind of other goal? Now, let me ask you this, Sean. If Trump does decide to make the run, become president again, would you consider being involved, if asked, to be a part of the administration in any way?
I've talked about this before. I wouldn't, and that's not like I'll be a supporter of his. I'll be a friend of his. I just, based on what we were just talking about, the intensity and the scrutiny, I wouldn't do it to myself, but I definitely wouldn't do it to my family. I'm in a very good place right now I love doing this show on Newsmax every night. It's a blast. I wake up every day excited about who's going to be on the show and what we're going to talk about. So from that perspective, I'd be, like I said, I'll be supportive, but I'm just not looking to get back in the game.
Very cool. All right. Last thing I want to hit you with here, Sean. I love to ask all the dads that I get on the podcast, what type of advice do you have for that new dad or for that about to be father who's out there listening?
I mean, I know this sounds really naive and simplistic, but I just think you just got to love your kid. And if you want to be present and have an interest in it'll never be for the wrong reasons, right? I think new dads sometimes want a manual, what do I do and how do I do it? And I think if you're there for them and you take an interest in what they're doing, and don't try to force them stuff. But we talk all the time about what they like and what they don't like and why they like it, and really take an interest in whether it's the sports or school. And I think that developing that relationship early with them is crucial. So it's from the get-go, trying to stay involved in what they're doing and ask questions and be present in their life is crucial to going forward.
Yeah, very well said. I love the message. Radical Nation. Link to the book is in the description of today's podcast episode. Sean Spicer, you're a first-class father all the way, and thank you for giving me a few minutes of your time here on First Class Fatherhood.
You bet, Alec. Thank you.